From ancient prophecies to secret technologies, from lost relics to mysteries capable of overturning our understanding of the universe. In the very heart of Rome, beneath marble columns and cathedrals, lies a tiny state that guards humanity's greatest secrets. Today on the TopFacts channel, we will descend deep beneath the Vatican and look into its documents that change the destinies of nations. Forbidden knowledge that could shake the world, and perhaps proof that we are not alone in the universe. Enjoy the viewing, everyone. But here is the intrigue. The most important historical legacy of the Vatican is not at all what rises above the ground, but what is hidden deep beneath it. There, in a bunker resembling a fortress, where entry is strictly forbidden to mere mortals, and which is guarded by armed sentries, something truly unique is concealed. Imagine 53 miles of shelves crammed with documents. That is more than 100 times longer than the walk across the entire Vatican. And all of it goes down into the earth. On those shelves are 12 centuries of history. Not only the history of the Catholic Church, but, without exaggeration, the history of all humanity. Welcome to the Vatican's secret archive. It is precisely here that the authentic testimonies of the most important events in world history are kept. But some are sure. This is only the tip of the iceberg. Beneath the layers of earth, there may be something else. Knowledge of hidden forces, prophecies of the end of the world, and even proof of the existence of extraterrestrials. Do you know what is astonishing? The Catholic Church began keeping its records already in the 1st century of our era. Imagine, 2,000 years ago, the first popes carried chests of documents with them, as if it were a suitcase with the most valuable papers. When one pope died, the records passed to his successor. Over time, the Church expanded, its power grew, and there became so many such records that dragging them around became simply impossible. Then, they began to be kept in the official residence of the Pope. By the 11th century, the archives had been scattered in different places, part in St. Peter's Basilica, part in the Lateran Palace, and something else in a palazzo on the Palatine Hill. But do not forget, these were the dark Middle Ages, a time of wars and constant conflicts. The archives were robbed and destroyed several times. Enormous layers of documents were irretrievably lost. In the year 1404, the Vatican itself was plundered. Pope Innocent VII fled the city, and official papers that held more than 1,000 years of history were simply thrown onto the streets like useless trash. Imagine what secrets could have evaporated forever then. It was precisely then that the Vatican realized the remnants of the archive are not only the pride of the Church, but also the key to understanding human history. It was necessary to urgently find a way to gather everything together and protect it from loss. In the year 1612, Pope Paul V ordered all documents to be collected and hidden in a maximally protected place, right under the Vatican. Thus, the famous Archivum Secretum Apostolicum Vaticanum, or the Vatican Secret Archive, appeared. Since then, it has lain underground, like a chest of the world's secrets. For centuries, the Catholic Church influenced culture, politics, and the destinies of entire nations. And imagine, in these archives, authentic documents have been preserved that record key moments of world history. These are not just records of papal affairs. They are a kind of rough draft of humanity. For example, it is precisely here that the original bull issued in 1493 is kept. The very document that literally split the New World in half after Christopher Columbus's expedition. That papal decree, Inter Caetera, gave Spain everything lying west of 100 leagues from the Azores and Cape Verde, and Portugal received the rest. Want to understand why Brazil speaks Portuguese while almost all the rest of South America speaks Spanish? Here is your answer, on those yellowed pages. In the archives lies the original of the ill-fated document of 1521, Decet Romanum Pontificem, the bull by which Martin Luther was officially excommunicated from the Church. He was given 60 days to publicly recant his ideas, but instead of repentance, Luther demonstratively burned the bull. That act became the spark that fanned the fire of the Reformation, which changed the religious landscape of Europe. And here's another masterpiece, a letter of 1530 written by English lords, priests, and the Archbishop of Canterbury himself. In it, they pleaded with the Pope to allow Henry VIII to divorce Catherine of Aragon and marry Anne Boleyn. A huge scroll almost 1 meter wide, covered with promises of extreme measures if the request were not granted. But the Pope refused, and thus began the English Reformation, the birth of the Anglican Church. And that is only the tip of the iceberg. The archives have preserved the transcripts of the trial of 1633, when Galileo was accused of heresy for asserting that the earth revolves around the sun. There, as well, are the documents on the trial of the Templars, found only in 2001 after centuries of oblivion. These papers completely overturned our understanding of the order's fate. It turns out that in 1308, the Pope officially absolved them of the charges of blasphemy. And here an intriguing question arises. If such documents were lost for centuries by accident, then what else might be hiding deep in the archives? Everything we have already listed sounds impressive, but there are those who are sure that the officially acknowledged contents of the archive are only a small part. Far more interesting is that which the Vatican keeps silent about. Rumors circulate that among the shelves is hidden correspondence between the Apostle Paul and Emperor Nero. Imagine a document capable of confirming or refuting the very existence of Jesus Christ. If such a letter truly exists, why has no one seen it to this day? Perhaps the answer is too inconvenient. There is another version. Somewhere in the archives rests the cross on which Christ was crucified, his crown of thorns, the Holy Grail, and even the Ark of the Covenant. That is, artifacts whose existence humanity has argued about for centuries. A genuine Indiana Jones set. But even without legends, what is confirmed by the Vatican itself fires the imagination. And yet interest in the archives is stoked precisely by myths and rumors. Skeptics, of course, love to destroy the romance. They say the very word secretum in the name is merely a misunderstanding. In Latin, it meant personal or private, and not mysterious at all. That is, essentially it is just a private archive, like the corporate documents of a large company. In 2019, the Vatican even officially changed the name from secret to apostolic archive to dispel excessive conjectures. But here's the hitch. Call it what you will, the fact remains. It is still a secret. Until 1881 entry was completely closed to mere mortals. Only the most high-ranking figures of the Church had access to the shelves. Only Pope Leo XIII dared to open the doors a little and let scholars in, but not journalists, not students, and certainly not curious tourists, only carefully selected researchers. And even if you have obtained that coveted right, you will not be allowed to wander between the stacks like in Harry Potter's library. No, you may order a maximum of 3 folders per day, and you do not know in advance what is inside them. There are no catalogs. Everything seems hidden in a sack. Want a sensation? Be prepared to dig for years, and if you suddenly stumble upon something that could overturn history, well, your scholarly powers may end abruptly. Access is renewed every 6 months, and the Church has the right to terminate it at any moment. And you know what? The Vatican has demonstrated how tightly it holds its secrets. In 2020, already after the name change, a storm of criticism crashed upon it. Jewish organizations and human rights groups demanded the opening of documents about Pope Pius XII and his actions during the Second World War. Many believed that Pius XII not only failed to condemn the Nazis, but in fact turned a blind eye to the deportation of Jews from Rome. The Vatican promised transparency and even declared, "The Church is not afraid of history." But when the documents were finally shown, they looked more like a PR campaign than an honest acknowledgement. The sharpest parts remained behind closed doors. And so, a reasonable question arises. If even such historical facts are kept under lock and key, then what else is hidden deeper? In the 18th century, archaeologists in Jerusalem, in Solomon's tomb, stumbled upon a mysterious book. On it stood the date, 1522. But scholars insisted that was only a copy, and the text itself could trace back to the 13th century, or even to oral traditions of still more ancient times. And here's what turned out to be inside: instructions for making magical amulets and talismans, spells for summoning spirits, and even, attention, rites for calling the devil himself. According to the description, one had to inscribe a magic circle, sacrifice a lamb, and then the demon supposedly appeared to strike a deal with you. The author of this book was considered a certain Honorius of Thebes, a semi-mythical figure about whom it was said that he was possessed by the devil. The work itself received the name the Grand Grimoire. In 18th century France, such grimoires, that is, books on occult practices, enjoyed enormous popularity. The Grand Grimoire became so famous that it spread through the French colonies and even received a second title, Le Dragon Rouge, the Red Dragon. Here, of course, lines from the Apocalypse at once come to mind. And behold, a great red dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns. It seems a terrifying power. But here's the paradox. Despite all the legends, there is no confirmation that anyone actually summoned the devil with the help of this book. Gradually, the fashion for it faded. And yet some are sure the reason is that only abridged, censored versions of the grimoire spread widely. The genuine original, complete, with working spells, remained in a single copy. And where is it now? Take a guess. Yes, according to rumors, it is kept precisely in the Vatican archives. And here, the most interesting thing begins. If the Church truly hid in its possession a book that supposedly opens access to the forces of darkness, then what else do they have? Could it be that they not only guard spiritual secrets, but also possess knowledge of forbidden practices? In 1972, an article appeared in the Italian magazine La Domenica del Corriere with a loud headline, "A machine has been invented that photographs the past." Sounds like the plot of a science fiction film, right? But what comes next is even more interesting. The main character of the publication was a Catholic priest, Pellegrino Ernetti. He claimed that in the depths of the Vatican, a device is hidden that allows one to see and even hear the past. Not a time machine that transports a person back, but something like a television that tunes in to events of long-gone days. Ernetti called it the chronovisor. According to him, with its help, he observed the last days of Jesus' life, the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, and even the moment when Moses received the 10 Commandments. The most shocking piece of evidence was supposedly a photograph of Christ's face at the moment of the crucifixion, which he presented to the world. Naturally, the sensation stirred both religious figures and scientists. Newspapers buzzed, the public debated, and then everything somehow petered out. No one ever saw the device, but it also proved impossible to definitively refute the chronovisor's existence. And now attention. In 1988, the Vatican itself unexpectedly issued an official document. It said that anyone who would use a device with such characteristics would be excommunicated from the Church. Stop. If the chronovisor does not exist, why issue such a prohibition? One asks, perhaps the device really does exist and is still kept in the archives. And if one can look into the past, then perhaps also peep into the future. On May 13th, 1981, right on St. Peter's Square, shots rang out. Pope John Paul II took 4 bullets and was a hair's breadth from death, but he miraculously survived. Later, he would say, "One hand fired the gun, another guided the bullet away," and he attributed that other hand to the Virgin Mary, venerated in Catholicism as Our Lady of Fatima. To understand where this association came from, we need to go back exactly 64 years earlier, to May 13th, 1917. In the small Portuguese town of Fatima, 3 children claimed that the Virgin Mary herself appeared to them and revealed 3 prophecies. These revelations became known as the 3 secrets of Fatima. The first secret, according to the children, showed them the horrors of hell, a sea of fire, souls like smoldering coals, demons, and cries of despair. All of it resembled scenes from horror films. Only the children were not watching a movie. The second secret foretold the end of the First World War, but also the beginning of an even more terrible one, the Second World War. Moreover, it mentioned an unknown light in the sky, which would become a sign of divine punishment. And indeed, in 1938, a mysterious aurora was observed across Europe, which many perceived as a harbinger of the approaching calamity. But the most enigmatic is the third secret. Sister Lucia, the last of the children, agreed to write it down only in 1944, and then on the condition that the document was not to be opened before the year 1960, when the meaning would become clearer. It would seem we would wait and find out. But in 1960, the Vatican declared the secret would remain under lock and key forever. Naturally, the world exploded with theories. Some supposed that it contained a prediction of nuclear apocalypse. Others, that it spoke of the end of the world. The New York Times in those years even wrote about a possible global nuclear annihilation. And only in 2000 did the Vatican finally announce the text of the third secret. It spoke of a bishop in white killed by soldiers, as well as the death of many priests and laypeople. The church said, "This is a prophecy about the assassination attempt on John Paul II." But many only smirked. Seriously? So many decades of secrecy for this? Doubts were fueled by rumors that, in fact, not the entire text had been published. In one interview, the future Pope Benedict XVI, still Cardinal Ratzinger, allegedly admitted, "There is more than what we published." Ratzinger later called this a lie, but curiously, he did so only after his resignation, when nothing obliged him to answer. By the way, there is one more eerie coincidence. In 1980, just a year before the assassination attempt, John Paul II himself said in Germany, "If the message says that oceans will flood entire continents, millions will die in an instant, is it even worth publishing it?" And now guess what many consider the real third secret? A prophecy of a global catastrophe, fire from the heavens that will destroy most of humanity. And yes, this is terrifyingly similar to the revelation that in 1973, a Japanese nun received in Akita. There, the Virgin Mary allegedly warned, "A punishment is coming, greater than the biblical flood." Coincidence? Or one and the same prophecy, only in different wrappings? In 1988, strange reports began appearing in newspapers. Supposedly during the restoration of the Vatican Library, unusual, elongated, clearly non-human skulls were found. Of course, there is no official confirmation, but rumors that the archives store evidence of the existence of extraterrestrials spread with lightning speed. And here's the most interesting part. The Vatican itself has never tried to distance itself from the UFO topic. Moreover, one high-ranking cardinal, Conrado Balducci, a close friend of many popes, said back in 1998, "Christ is called the King of the universe, and not only of the earth. That means that all beings in the universe including extraterrestrials, may be connected to God. Think about that. The cardinal did not deny extraterrestrials, but directly said that they, too, are part of the divine plan. And now move to 2009. The Vatican organized the first international conference on astrobiology. Scientists, astronomers, and representatives of the Church itself gathered together to discuss the possibility of extraterrestrial life. It sounds as if an episode of The X-Files is coming alive right under the Vatican domes. And you know what adds spice? In American Arizona, in the Mount Graham Mountains, the Vatican participates in the operation of an international observatory. There stands one of the most powerful telescopes on the planet. And that telescope has an instrument with a rather ominous name, LUCIFER. Yes, exactly so. In full, large binocular telescope, near-infrared utility, with camera and integral field unit for extragalactic research. That is, simply an abbreviation, but is it a coincidence that it came out as Lucifer? And now add to this the words of astronaut Gordon Cooper, one of NASA's original 7. Want to know about UFOs and little green men? Ask the Vatican. And here's a question for you. If the Church is ready to baptize extraterrestrials, Pope Francis once publicly said, and who are we to close the doors? If it is seeking life in space, with the help of a telescope named Lucifer, then what does it already know that it prefers to keep silent about? Now that we have walked through this entire labyrinth of stories, rumors, and riddles, it is time to ask the main question. What, in fact, is hidden behind the thick walls and underground vaults of the Vatican? We know for certain, the archives contain unique documents. From the bull that divided the New World, to the transcripts of the trial of Galileo and the absolution of the Templars. This is a treasury of world history, and there is no point in arguing about that. But even more, it fires the imagination to think what might be there that has never been officially shown. Legendary relics, prophecies of the end of the world, the Grand Grimoire, mysterious artifacts, and possibly even testimony about the existence of extraterrestrials. Think about it. If the Vatican for decades kept documents about the Second World War hidden, if it could tuck away authentic texts of prophecies, then how can we be sure that we are being shown the full picture? And here a philosophical choice stands before the viewer. Would you want to know everything? Imagine that tomorrow you are told the exact date of the end of the world. What will you do? Go for pizza, hug your loved ones, or try to flee to a bunker? Perhaps that is precisely why the Church keeps silent, because knowledge can destroy far more powerfully than ignorance. Or perhaps, and this is the most intriguing, the Vatican is simply keeping these secrets until better times. But whatever the truth may be, one thing is clear. Deep beneath St. Peter's Square, behind closed doors, rests an archive that could overturn our entire idea of the past and the future. And who knows, perhaps someday, someone will still get to the truth. What of this astonished you the most? And do you have any thoughts about it? Write comments and watch our previous episodes. They are even more interesting than what you have seen now. Thank you for watching.